Welcome back to Blacklit Memory. Tonight, I've got 8 Appalachian horror stories, all grounded, all personal, and all tied to the Smoky Mountains in ways that don't let go. These aren't tales of monsters in the dark. They're stories of things we almost understand: lost signals, bad timing, broken memories, and something just outside the light. They stay quiet until you remember them. If these mountains feel familiar to you, maybe there's a reason. Don't forget to follow, share, and drop a comment telling me which story haunted you the longest. Now get warm, stay close, and listen carefully. I hadn't been back to Jake's Hollow in over a decade. Not since the year my father died. The road was narrower than I remembered, with creeping underbrush swallowing the gravel edges and pines leaning overhead like they were whispering about my return. A few turns in, the reception on my phone dropped, just like Dad always said it would when you got too far from town. I almost laughed at the thought, because he'd always said it like a warning. Like, once you're out of signal, boy, you're on your own. My name's Tom Thomas Clay, if you read it off a document, but my father never called me that. Just boy, or kid, even when I was damn near 30. He grew up in these mountains, carved fence posts for the old-timers, hunted off trail, built our cabin himself with bare hands and bitter silence. When he died, I couldn't bring myself to sell the cabin. It sat locked, cold, for years. Then this summer, something started to pull at me. Not grief, exactly. More like the itch of a story not finished. The cabin stood just where I left it, a single porch light bulb hanging limp from the wire. Though there hadn't been power here in years. The lock on the front door had rusted, but the key still fit. Inside, the smell hit me first: dust, pine sap, and old motor oil. I left my duffel by the door and started sweeping the corners, same way Dad used to. Didn't matter that no one had lived here in years in Appalachia. You don't step into a place without making it yours again. I brought one of those new camping radios, a small one with crank power and a weather band, mostly for the noise. The first night I turned it on, it crackled through static, picking up some gospel music and faint chatter. Just ambiance. But sometime after midnight, as the rain started ticking on the tin roof, it clicked itself on. No alarm, no movement from me, just a small click, like someone tapped the on button. And then the voice. It wasn't music, not at first, just a faint whisper. And I mean whisper, the kind that crawls up the back of your neck because you can't tell if it's behind you or in your ear. I leaned closer. The voice said, "Come home now." It was the tone that stopped my breath. Not what it said; those words could mean anything, but how it sounded: old, low, like gravel soaked in bourbon, with just a hint of my father's voice. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the edge of the cot, flashlight in hand, staring at that little gray radio. The rain picked up, wind pressed against the boards, and the trees made that sound I remembered from childhood, like they were walking past the window. At some point, the voice stopped. Or maybe it never started at all. But I left the radio off the next day, took the battery out, and stuck it in the drawer, just to be sure. But the night after that, it happened again. I hadn't even touched the radio. It was across the room, unplugged from its battery. I was brushing my teeth in the tin sink when it clicked back on. Soft and low, the voice again. Same tone, same rhythm. Con, come home now. Son. I dropped the toothbrush in the basin. The voice crackled, cut out, returned. Cold out, where you are. I told myself it was interference, maybe some leftover charge. But my heart knew better. That voice was too personal, too tailored. It knew the words that would freeze me in place. I wrapped the radio in an old towel and stuffed it under the cot. The next morning, I hiked out to the tree line with it, chucked it down a ravine, let the damn thing rot among the moss and runoff. Thought that'd be the end of it. But the next night, the voice came back. And it wasn't coming from the radio. It was coming from the porch. I didn't move. Not right away. I just stood there by the window, too afraid to even pull back the curtain. The porch boards creaked once, then twice the way they used to when Dad came home late from hunting, heavy boots stomping the wet wood. But this time, there were no boots, no flashlight beam, no real shape. Just that voice again, clear as it had ever been, humming low like static held between teeth. Come home. I waited till dawn before I stepped outside. The air was thick with mist, and every leaf shivered like it had something to say. The porch was empty, of course, no footprints, no sign anyone had stood there all night. But the old nail I remembered in the doorpost, the one Dad used to hang his cap on, had a strip of torn cloth tied to it, just dangling. Gray, frayed, like it had been ripped from a coat I hadn't seen in years. A coat just like the one Dad used to wear in the fall. I should have left then, hiked back to the truck and never looked back. But something about it, I can't explain. It wasn't like a haunting, it felt personal. Like I owed him something. Like whatever was out there wasn't done talking to me. That night, I built a fire outside, kept a flashlight, the shotgun, and a thermos of black coffee nearby. I stayed awake, back to the cabin wall, eyes on the woods. Nothing happened for hours. Then, just after 2, the wind shifted, real still, like the woods held its breath. Then I heard it a voice, but closer now, like it was inside my chest. It said, "You shouldn't have thrown it away." I jumped to my feet, flashlight swinging. Nothing moved. But then, across the clearing, by the tree line, I saw it. The radio, sitting upright, battery panel still off, towel still wrapped around it, damp now with dew. I walked toward it without thinking, picked it up. It was cold, like metal left in snow. But it shouldn't have been. As soon as I touched it, the static started not from the speaker, but inside my head. A low, gnawing hum. I heard my father say my name. Not loud, not soft, just wrong. I threw it again. But this time, it didn't bounce. It just stopped, like the air caught it. And then I heard footsteps. Behind me. Slow, deliberate, scraping on the gravel. I turned, and I swear to God, just for a second, there was a figure on the porch. Same height as Dad, same build, shoulders hunched like he always stood when tired. But the face was blurred, like my memory couldn't quite render it. It tilted its head, spoke. "Cold out here, boy." I ran. Didn't grab the duffel. Didn't look back. Just ran through the tree line. Branches slapping my arms. Knees cracking on stone. I don't know how long I ran. Only that the sun was up by the time I found the truck. I didn't stop driving until I hit paved road. Until I saw the blue signage for Sevier County. I stayed in a motel that night. Door bolted, lights on, phone by my side. But I didn't sleep. Next morning, I checked my voicemail. One new message. The number was blank, just zeros. I played it. And there it was, my father's voice. Clear, calm, don't leave the radio. Boy, it's the only way I know how to reach you. I never went back to Jake's Hollow. I let the cabin rot. Sold the land through a lawyer. But sometimes, usually at night, my phone buzzes. No number, just a blank screen. And sometimes I hear static in my ears, like a voice trying to come through. I never answer, but I still keep the radio. Wrapped in a towel, in the trunk, just in case. Because part of me, the part that still misses him, still wants to believe it really was him. And the other part knows it wasn't. Not anymore. The first night back at the cabin, the air felt too still. The wind that usually rolled down off the Smokies seemed to hold its breath, like the woods were waiting. I unpacked quickly, mostly essentials meds, canned soup, bottled water. Lana was already asleep in the back bedroom, her breathing thin and raspy. I told myself it was just the elevation. The dry air, maybe. But the truth was, she'd looked worse than I remembered. Like something in her was sinking below the surface, just too tired to fight anymore. I'm Lana's older sister, Emily, 32, formerly a nurse at a long-term care facility down in Chattanooga before I took the leave. I hadn't seen her in almost 6 months, not since her diagnosis. They still weren't sure what it was exactly. Some kind of neurological thing, maybe early onset MS. Maybe not. The doctors kept using phrases like idiopathic progression and rare symptom profile. We'd rented the cabin in the Smokies when we were kids, back when things were easier. She asked to come here one more time before her body gave out completely. So here we were. The cabin was old but sturdy, half sunk into the hillside, surrounded by pine and hickory. We were 20 miles from the nearest road, deeper than I liked. But Lana insisted. She said the quiet helped her sleep. The first 2 nights were peaceful enough except for the wind. It didn't sound natural, more like dragging, like someone hauling something across the roof in slow, careful steps. I dismissed it at first, branches maybe, the wind playing tricks. But the 3rd night, I heard it again, heavier this time. 3 steps, then a pause, then 3 more, right across the roof, directly above where Lana slept. I held my breath, waited. Then the creak of the porch board, the one that always sagged. I stepped into the hallway, flashlight in hand, opened the front door. Nothing. Just pine needles and gravel, dark wood stretching out like an ocean. But when I turned the light toward the side of the cabin, I saw them. Footprints. Not in the dirt, the ground was too dry, but in dust. On the metal roofing, as if someone barefoot had walked across it while it was damp. The prints were clear, spaced evenly. Human, definitely. But not mine, and not Lana's. She could barely walk from the bed to the kitchen. I checked the roof with the ladder next morning. Nothing up there. No sign of damage, no leftover prints. Clean as new sheet metal. But that night, it happened again. Same steps, same pacing. When I went outside, there was nothing in the woods. But this time, the porch light had been switched off. I never turn that light off. I keep it on for Lana, so she can see the hallway if she needs to get up. But when I came back inside, the switch was flipped. Not broken, not shorted, just off. I didn't sleep after that. I sat on the couch with the light on and a kitchen knife nearby. Lana never stirred, never heard a thing. I didn't want to scare her, not when she was already fading. But each night, the steps got bolder, longer pacing, heavier thuds, like whoever it was, or whatever it was, didn't care if I heard anymore. The fifth night, I stayed by the window all evening, didn't blink, nothing moved. Around midnight, I heard something drop on the roof, a thud, then a soft scraping, like nails on sheet metal. I raced outside. The woods were silent. No wind, no frogs, not even the usual owl. And that's when I looked up. There was a figure crouched on the roof, bare feet, long arms, head tilted, looking right down at me. And then it crawled backward over the peak and out of sight. I didn't chase it. I couldn't. My legs felt locked, like they'd sunk roots into the dirt. I stood there for what felt like minutes, flashlight beam trembling against the black edge of the roof line. Nothing came back into view. But I swear, even now, I felt it watching me. Not just from the woods, from above. I backed into the cabin without turning my back on the roof. I locked every door, every window, even though part of me already knew it wouldn't matter. I didn't tell Lana. She needed rest. She needed not to know that something had been crawling across the roof while she slept. The next day, I checked again in daylight. Nothing. But this time, the porch railing had changed. I didn't notice it at first, just a single, smudged handprint too wide, with fingers that bent a little wrong, not freakishly long or monstrous, just wrong, as if whoever left it didn't understand how hands were supposed to work. That night, I brought the hunting rifle inside. I hadn't fired it in years, and I didn't even know if it was still sighted right. But it made me feel like I had a say in something. I set it next to the chair and didn't blink for hours. No steps, no roof sounds, just silence so thick it pressed in on my ears. Around 3 a.m., Lana called out from her room, her first words in days. Just one Emily, and then it's under the house. I froze. The cabin sat on a crawl space, no more than 3 feet of clearance beneath the floorboards. I'd never liked going down there, not even as a kid. I rushed to Lana's room. She was sitting up, pale as ash, eyes wide but glassy. I asked what she meant. She just pointed to the floor. "It's crawling under us," she whispered, "looking for a way in." Her voice cracked on the last word, like something inside her recognized the truth of it. I grabbed the flashlight, went outside, and dropped to my knees by the crawlspace hatch. The boards creaked under me, and for a second I felt the faintest vibration, like something shifting its weight below. I lifted the hatch. The smell hit me. First old meat and wet earth. I aimed the light into the dark. The beam caught something pale, too pale, scraping along the dirt. Not a rat, not a person. I couldn't see the whole thing. Just part of a back, slick and hunched, like a spine without skin. It moved faster than I expected, back into the shadows. I slammed the hatch shut, dragged a concrete block over it. Then 2 more for good measure. I didn't go back inside right away. I just stood in the moonlight, shaking, trying not to cry, trying not to believe what I'd seen. But when I opened the door, Lana was waiting in the hall. She looked up at me and said, "It's not the first time it's come, just the first time you stayed long enough to hear it." She collapsed that morning. Her body couldn't take the stress. Or maybe it was always heading that way. The medics came up from Gatlinburg after I called from the ranger station. They took her to the hospital, said she was stable for now. I didn't tell them anything about the roof or the crawl space, just that I'd been scared something might happen, and it had. I stayed one more night to pack things. Last night, I didn't hear the steps this time, but I found something worse. On the kitchen table, where I'd left nothing, sat a small bundle, wrapped in deer hide. Inside it, a strip of scalp. Human, with pale blonde hair, same color as Lana's. Lana never went back to the cabin. Neither did I. We got her into long-term care in Asheville. She doesn't talk much anymore, but sometimes she whispers to herself. Staring out the window, I caught one of the nurses writing down what she said. It was the same sentence, over and over. It walks above, it watches below, and no matter where I go, when I lie down to sleep, I can still hear it. 3 steps. Pause. 3 more. Right over my head. When I was a kid, my grandmother used to tell me about a stone deep in the woods that whispered to those who got too close. She always said it like a joke, in that slow, musical way old mountain women had half warning, half lullaby. Don't follow the whispers. Cora, they know your name before you do. I never thought much of it. I figured it was just one of those Appalachian stories meant to keep kids from wandering too far into the trees. But now, standing on a trail that barely existed anymore, backpack digging into my shoulders, I could hear something under the wind, something almost like a voice. My name's Cora Bell. I'm 32. Teach middle school in Knoxville. And I hadn't been back to Sevier County since my grandmother's funeral. She raised me after Mom left a stern woman, kind in quiet ways, who believed in signs and patterns and the weight of history. When she died, I found her old sketchbook among her things. Inside was a drawing of a stone with carvings around the base and a date written underneath October 12th. No year, just the day. That date had passed me by every year without meaning anything. But this October, I couldn't ignore it. I don't know why I went. I told myself it was curiosity, closure, something to connect me back to her. But it was more than that. I'd been having dreams, voices in the woods, the smell of moss and iron, and something calling my name, in the exact tone she used when she wanted me to pay attention. I thought maybe if I found the place she'd drawn, I'd find something else too, something buried under the silence she'd left behind. It took me half a day to find the spot. The trail was overgrown, more animal path than hiking route. My GPS cut out an hour in, but I kept going, checking the sketch against the rocks and trees until I found the clearing, a ring of dark moss. And in the center, the stone. It wasn't as big as I'd imagined, maybe waist high, shaped like an old stump with its top smoothed flat. The carvings weren't deep, just faint etchings like weathered runes. But the moment I stepped into the clearing, the world felt quieter, like the forest exhaled and held. I knelt beside it, put my hand on the top. The surface was warm, not sun-warmed, internally warm, like something lived inside it. And then I heard it, not a voice through the air, but through the stone itself, vibrating up through my palm and into my bones. It said my name. I jerked back, heart hammering, looked around. No one. Nothing. Just trees and stillness. But when I turned back to the stone, something was different. A new mark had appeared, a small groove on the flat top, like a letter being carved one slow inch at a time. I didn't touch it again. I just stood there, frozen, until the whisper returned. "Do you remember?" That's all it said. 3 words. Not my grandmother's voice, not mine, but close to both, like someone trying to blend them together. I backed out of the clearing. Didn't run, just walked. Eyes wide, heart pounding. I didn't make camp. I just kept moving until the trail felt familiar again. And the sun began to fall. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every time I shut my eyes, I saw the stone. And I saw something else too, a memory I hadn't touched in years. Me, maybe 7 or 8, standing in that same clearing. My grandmother beside me, her hand on the stone, whispering something I couldn't quite hear. And me watching, wide-eyed, not understanding, but part of it. I woke at first light, still in my clothes, heart beating like I'd been running all night. I couldn't shake that image, Grandma's hand on the stone, her lips moving. Didn't feel like a dream anymore. It felt like a memory that had been sealed off until the stone unearthed it. I told myself I should leave, drive back to Knoxville, pretend it never happened. But I didn't. Instead, I packed a thermos and a flashlight and started back down the trail. The woods felt heavier this time, less open. I kept hearing sounds that didn't quite fit a shuffle. A cough, something pacing just out of view. I tried not to look behind me too often. When I reached the clearing again, the moss around the stone had darkened, like it had soaked up something overnight. The groove on top had deepened. Now it looked unmistakably like a letter C. My name. I didn't want to touch it, but I had to. Just one hand, fingers to the stone. This time, the whisper came faster. "Cora Bell," it said. And the voice was all wrong, layered, like 2 people speaking at once. "You came back. You remember." I pulled away, but not before I saw something new carved just beneath the surface, faint outlines of a date. October 12th, 1998, the year I turned 8. The last fall I ever spent in the mountains with her. That was the year she stopped taking me to the woods. The year she told me never to go near the hollow again. I sat in the clearing, piecing together things I didn't want to remember. That fall, I'd found her sleepwalking dirt on her hands, twigs in her hair, whispering to herself in the dark. I thought it was grief or age, but maybe it was something else. Maybe she'd been listening to the stone too long. Maybe she'd given something to it. I should have left it there. I should have walked away. But I needed answers. I leaned closer and whispered, "What do you want from me?" The stone vibrated. The moss pulsed. And the voice answered to finish what she started. I stumbled back. My flashlight flickered. Though I hadn't turned it on, in its brief glow, I saw something on the opposite side of the stone, a carving I hadn't noticed. A face, etched shallow into the surface. My face, younger, the same as in the memory. Next to it, 2 other shapes. One was my grandmother's face, unmistakable. The other, I didn't recognize. Hollow eyes, long mouth. It looked like it had been scratched in with panic. Not part of the original design. A warning, maybe, or a witness. I ran. I didn't stop until I was back at the trailhead. Drove all the way home with my hands clenched around the wheel, the car feeling colder by the mile. That night, I burned the sketchbook, blocked off the dreams with music and lights and noise. But none of it worked. It's been 3 weeks. I don't sleep through the night anymore. Every October 12th now loops in my head the clearing, the stone, the whisper that sounded almost like me. Sometimes when I wake, my hands are covered in dirt, moss under the nails. I hear the voice even in traffic, in crowds, under fluorescent lights. And sometimes if I sit really still, I can feel the vibration in my bones again, just under the skin, like something waiting to speak. Because I didn't just remember, I answered. There was a tree halfway up the ridge that I couldn't stop thinking about. Every year, around the anniversary, I'd see it in my mind like it was just outside the window. The bark split at the base, half charred from some old lightning strike, and 3 letters carved low into the trunk. Jack. That was as far as he got before the weather turned. The blade slipped. He laughed, said he'd finish it next trip. But Jacob never got a next trip. The mountain took him. My name's Ethan Holloway. I'm 30, a backcountry guide by trade, born and raised in Maryville. Jacob was my closest friend, more like a brother. He came with me on every trip I offered to locals wanting real mountain experience. 2 years ago, during the last fall hike of the season, a rock slide hit while we were cutting across a narrow pass. I made it out. He didn't. His body was found a day later under 6 feet of stone and wet clay. I still hear the sound sometimes that long, cracking sigh the mountain gave just before it broke. This year, I finally went back. I told myself it was to scout the route, check erosion patterns, make sure no one else would get hurt. But that was bullshit. I went because I couldn't stop dreaming about that tree. I'd see it every night in my sleep, hear the blade against the bark. The way Jacob said my name when he was teasing me, Eth, come look at this view. Man, you gotta see this. His voice always came with the wind, always at the end. The first day was quiet. The air had that damp, earthy smell you only get in October. When the ground starts to turn, I hiked in alone, packed light, told no one. The trail was overgrown, as expected. But I found the marker cairn we left years ago, a pile of 5 stones and 1 flat slate balanced on top. Still there, still untouched. I climbed another half mile and found the tree. It hadn't changed. Split bark, blackened bottom, and just barely visible. The letters Jack. I ran my fingers across them, half expecting them to flake away like a dream. But they were real. Too real. I knelt there longer than I meant to, just breathing, remembering. I told myself I'd carve the rest of his name for him, finish what he started. But when I pulled out my pocket knife and looked back at the tree, the letters had changed. Now it read Jace. That was never what he wrote. I didn't move, just stared. The E wasn't scratched clean, it looked like it had bubbled up from beneath the bark. Raw and fresh, like the tree had grown it overnight. My stomach twisted. I stepped back, checked the area for signs of hikers or rangers. Nothing. No footprints, no trash. Just wind and trees and the deep hush of mountain silence. I was alone. I had to be. But then the wind stopped. And in the quiet, I heard it. My name. Not loud, not whispered, just there, like someone standing behind me, speaking normally, like we were mid-conversation. "Ethan?" I spun around, heart in my throat, knife still clutched tight. There was nothing. Just the slope behind me, scrub brush, and the skeletal line of trees crowding in on the ridge. But I felt it, that shift in the air, the presence of someone too close. I called out Jacob's name like an idiot, like maybe I'd find some stranger who just happened to share his voice, hiding behind a tree with a cruel sense of humor. No answer came, just the wind again, starting up like someone had unpaused it. I turned back to the tree, and the letters were different. Not Jace now. Jacob. The whole name, clean and sharp, like it had been etched just seconds ago. Bark peeled back at the edges, oozing sap in slow tears. My breath caught. I stepped away, slow, careful, like the ground might break if I moved too fast. The silence came back in waves, louder than noise, like being underwater. I could hear my own heartbeat in my ears, and then the tree sighed. That's the only word I have for it. A deep, low groan from inside the trunk, like a chest exhaling after holding breath too long. I backed up faster, nearly stumbling on a root. The sound came again, louder, closer, but not from the tree this time, from the ridge above. Gravel shifting, small rocks tumbling. Then a single, heavy step. I looked up. There was a figure standing where the pass had collapsed 2 years ago. Same build, same jacket, same stance as Jacob on that last day. But it wasn't him. His face, it wasn't finished. The shape was there, eyes, mouth, chin, but smeared, like a drawing in the rain. It tilted its head like Jacob always did when he was about to say something smart-ass. Then it raised one hand, the left, the one Jacob broke in college, forever bent at a weird angle. And it pointed down at me. I ran. Didn't think, didn't check the trail, just bolted downhill. Branches whipping my arms, legs catching on rocks and roots. I slid twice, hit my shoulder, tore a hole in my jeans. Didn't stop. The forest felt alive now. Trees too close, shadows moving too fast. I didn't slow down until I reached the creek, shallow and cold, where Jacob and I used to camp. I knelt in the middle, water rushing over my hands, trying to feel real again. My skin was buzzing like it wasn't mine. I looked up and saw the cairn. Still 5 stones, but now the top piece, the flat slate, had something scratched into it. Ethan Holloway, October 14th. That was today. I left everything. Backpack, knife, my old trail tags from my guiding days. Walked straight out of those woods and didn't stop until I hit the first road I recognized. Hitched a ride with a trucker who didn't ask questions and dropped me at the Shell station in town. I called my boss, said I was done, said I wouldn't be guiding anymore. Didn't explain why. Some nights, I still hear it. That cracking sound of rock giving way, the creak of bark under pressure. And once, just once, I dreamed of the tree again. Only this time. There were 2 names carved into it, mine and Jacob's, side by side. And I knew, in the way you just know in dreams, that there was room for one more below, and the tree was still growing. My father believed in things most people wouldn't say out loud. Not ghosts exactly, not demons, but rhythms, echoes. He said the land held memory, and if you stayed still long enough, it would remember you back. I didn't grow up with him. He left before I turned 6. Disappeared into the mountains with a beat-up recorder, a half-finished doctorate in ethnomusicology, and a fascination with Cherokee rhythms he claimed were older than the tribe itself. He sent me one letter when I turned 22. Inside was a sketched map and a note. If you ever want to understand me, follow the sound. I didn't go then. I didn't even keep the letter, just scanned it and buried it in an old email archive. But this fall, after he died, I was named the sole inheritor of a safety deposit box in Asheville. Inside was a small journal, his field notes, and a hand drum wrapped in deerskin cloth. The skin was cracked, brittle, and stained with something dark at the edge. It smelled like earth. When I touched it, I swear I felt a pulse. Not just my own, something slower, deeper. My name's Marcus. I'm 38. Teach folklore and oral traditions at a small liberal arts college in North Carolina. I'd always avoided my father's path. He was too obsessed, too fringe for the academic world. But something about that drum got under my skin. I started dreaming in tempo, waking with my fingers tapping the same 5-beat rhythm he scrawled in his notes. Thump, 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 then thump, thump. I'd find myself tapping it on the desk during lectures, drumming it out on my thighs in bed. It felt like something was playing through me. The map he'd sent all those years ago led to a hollow just east of Klingman's Dome off-trail, deep in a part of the Smokies not marked on tourist maps. I told myself it was research, closure. One last walk in my father's footprints so I could finally step out of them. I brought the drum, a recorder, and a week's worth of supplies. Hiked in on a cold October morning, mist rising off the ground like breath. The first 2 days were quiet. No animals, no birds. Just the sound of my own boots crunching leaves and the drum tucked tightly in my pack. I found the hollow around dusk on the second day, a dip in the land, ringed by black pines, ground thick with red moss. At the center was a circle of stones, partially collapsed. I sat there, waited, didn't know for what. And then, just before full dark, I heard it. Thump, 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 thump. It came from the edge of the clearing. No wind, no movement, just rhythm. I thought it was in my head. I pulled the drum out, set it in my lap, tried to match the beat. My hands moved without thinking. When I stopped, the echo kept going. Same tempo, like someone else picking up where I left off. I turned on the recorder. The mic picked up only my breathing in the fire. But I heard it. I know I did. That night, I dreamt of a figure in the woods, tall, wrapped in skins, face hidden beneath an antlered mask. It didn't speak, just stood across the fire, watching, one hand resting on a drum like mine. In the dream, I couldn't move. I couldn't even blink. The rhythm kept going, deep and steady, until my chest ached in time with it. When I woke, the drum was next to me, uncovered, and something had been added to its skin. At first, I thought I was imagining it. The stain on the drumhead had changed shape overnight. What had been a dark, irregular patch now formed a nearly perfect circle at the center, like the start of an eye or a mouth. It wasn't paint. It wasn't old blood. I touched it, half expecting it to smear. But it didn't. It was part of the drum now soaked in, fused with the hide. That low, thumping rhythm echoed in my skull, slow and wet like a heartbeat in water. I wanted to leave. Should have. But the clearing felt like a trap that hadn't sprung yet, the kind you don't notice until you step out of it. The trees around me didn't move, didn't sway in the breeze, because there wasn't any breeze. The air had gone still, thick. I packed up before sunrise and started back the way I came, following my marked trail. But within an hour, the landscape had changed. Landmarks I'd noted on the way in a crooked pine, a split boulder, a fallen log were gone, replaced by others I didn't recognize. It was like the trail was rebuilding itself behind me. I stopped walking and turned in a slow circle. That's when I heard it again, the rhythm. Not behind me, not around me, beneath me. The ground vibrated ever so slightly, enough to send a cold bloom up my legs. The drum, strapped to my pack, felt heavier. I found the old circle of stones again just before noon. I hadn't turned around. I'd walked straight. But somehow I was back. Except now, someone had added to the circle a line of bone fragments laid out like spokes in a wheel, all pointing toward the center. At the center, my drum sat. I hadn't put it there. I didn't remember taking it off my back. But there it was, resting on the moss. That dark circle on its surface now widened, shaped into a spiral. I called out not for help, not expecting an answer, just to hear my own voice. It didn't carry. It died just past the edge of the stones, like the air had swallowed it. Then something stepped between the trees. Not the figure from my dream, my father, or something that looked like him. He didn't speak, just crouched beside the drum and tapped the same beat: thump, 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 thump. I stood frozen, heart hammering, brain trying to understand what I was seeing. His clothes were the same ones from the photo I'd found in the deposit box, torn at the cuffs, dirt-stained. But his eyes were all wrong, too black, too wide. He kept tapping, faster now, like he was waiting for me to join him. I didn't. I couldn't. I stepped back, but the rhythm didn't stop. It followed me. Even when I turned and ran blindly, through branches and briars, not caring where I ended up, it stayed with me. Louder now, closer, like it was inside me. I made it out after 2 days. Don't remember how. Don't remember where the trail came back or who found me. The park ranger said I was dehydrated, talking nonsense, clutching a torn-up deer hide like it was a child's blanket. I didn't explain. I couldn't. I left the drum in the forest, or at least, I think I did. But I still hear it, at night, when everything's quiet. Thump, 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 thump. My hands start tapping before I know it. My dreams take me back to that circle, to the black-eyed version of him, to the rhythm that never stops. I'm starting to wonder if it ever needed the drum at all. Maybe it just needed me. When my brother died, the first thing I felt was relief. It's a terrible thing to admit, but it's the truth. Relief that I wouldn't get another 3 a.m. phone call from a stranger saying he'd been found wandering the highway. Relief that I wouldn't have to explain to anyone else what schizophrenia had turned him into. But that relief didn't last. It curdled into something heavy and wet guilt, mostly, and fear. Because 3 days after we buried Josh, I got a voicemail from his old number. "My name's Alex. I'm 29, a software engineer. I live in Asheville now, far enough from where we grew up in Bryson City to feel like a different state entirely. Josh and I were close once. He was the fun one. the loud one, always cracking jokes, always bringing weird books home from the library about Appalachian ghosts and alternate frequencies of thought. Then the voices started. Then the shadows. And then the silence, the kind where you go years without a real conversation. Just clipped text messages and emergency contact calls. He died in the woods, alone, a half-mile from a trailhead he used to visit as a teenager. They ruled it an accident, exposure, no drugs in his system, no sign of trauma. But I knew he'd been unraveling for a while, thought the forest was talking to him through broken branches and flickering light. I didn't go to the scene. Didn't want to. Instead, I cleaned out his apartment, boxed up his notebooks, and told myself that was the end of it. Then the voicemail came. The number was his same local prefix, same 6 digits I used to know by heart. No contact name, just a blank icon and the timestamp 2:14 a.m. I stared at it for hours before I played it. The message was 10 seconds long. No static, no distortion, just Josh's voice, calm and clear, saying, "Hey, I think it's coming back. If I don't make it." Then silence. Click. End of message. I checked the metadata. The voicemail had been received that morning, 3 days after his burial. I had the funeral program still sitting on my desk. I played the message again, trying to hear something else. Maybe it was old. Maybe it got stuck in the system. But no. I heard wind, leaves rustling, a bird call I couldn't place, and his voice, saying my name, like a warning. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept checking my phone like I expected another message to show up. At 3:07 a.m., it vibrated. One new audio file. Not a voicemail this time, just an unnamed MP4 sent via some cloud transfer link I didn't recognize. I almost didn't play it. But of course, I did. The recording was short, maybe 6 seconds. The first half was just breathing. Then Josh's voice again. Barely above a whisper, "You didn't listen. It's coming through the trees now." I didn't sleep the rest of the night. I stayed on the couch with the lights on, watching the screen, half expecting the next message to come through as a video, maybe with his face on it. But nothing came. Morning was worse, bright and too normal. I went through the motions coffee, inbox, trying to work, but my thoughts kept circling that voice. It wasn't just that it sounded like Josh. It was how he spoke, not frantic, not unwell, certain, like someone reporting a truth no one else could see. I called the number back that afternoon. Straight to voicemail. I didn't leave one. I checked the cloud service that delivered the second file. It didn't exist. The link had vanished. Nothing in my browser history. I checked my phone logs. But the MP4 wasn't there anymore either. Just gone. Like it was never supposed to be found. I started wondering if someone was messing with me. But who? No one else even knew the history, not the real one. Not the nights I'd turned off his calls. Not the message he left on my old voicemail 2 years ago. "I know you're trying to live a clean life. Just don't forget me." That night, I went back through his notebooks. Most of it was scribbles dense, paranoid handwriting, lots of arrows and lines drawn between half-finished thoughts. But one page stood out. It had a drawing of trees, tall, narrow trunks, leafless and something between them. Not a person, not an animal, just a shape, like a rip in the space between, underneath. He'd written, "It uses our voices now. It learned them." The next message came at 2:33 a.m. This time, it played on its own. No notification, no control. Just started speaking from my phone on the nightstand. Josh's voice again, but broken now like it was layered. Slowed, repeating every few syllables. You have to come. Come to the trail. Then something else. Another voice beneath his throat ear, mimicking him, echoing him like a mockingbird in reverse. I knocked the phone onto the floor, heart in my throat. I didn't pick it up for hours. By morning, the screen was black. It wouldn't turn on. I took a burner phone and drove out to the trailhead where they found him. I don't know what I thought I'd find, maybe some makeshift memorial, maybe evidence this was all some elaborate setup. But it was quiet, almost too quiet. No hikers, no wind. The parking lot was empty. I stepped onto the path and felt it immediately, the shift. The cold, like the air here, wasn't connected to the rest of the world. Half a mile in, I heard my name. Soft, from behind me, Alex. Not yelled, not whispered, just spoken. I turned. No one was there. I haven't gone back since. I left the burner phone in the forest, let the battery die with whatever was inside it. But some nights, I still hear it, his voice coming from my speakers. Even when they're off, the cadence is always slightly off. The words are close, but never quite right, like something still learning. I don't answer unknown numbers anymore. But sometimes, they still leave messages. And sometimes, they know things only Josh ever told me. I found the bundle on the second morning of the trip, tucked beneath a loose plank on the deck of the old survey cabin. Wrapped in red-dyed cloth, tied with black thread, and still damp. Wasn't supposed to be there. This place had been boarded up since the late 90s, half buried in kudzu and fallen pine. I'd only returned to photograph the decay to capture a kind of personal penance. But when I touched the bundle, something shifted in the air, like the moment before a storm. My name's Sofia Ramos. I'm 31, freelance photographer, and I used to be good at pretending the past didn't matter. Years ago, during an undergrad cultural heritage project, I'd made the mistake of treating something sacred like a curiosity. A bundle just like this one, deerskin wrapped, stitched with red string gifted by a Cherokee classmate during a campus event. I snapped a photo of it, posted it with a dumb caption. He saw it. I never heard from him again. This cabin, half rotted on the southern edge of the Smokies, used to belong to his family, though I hadn't known that until after I planned the trip. I told myself the timing was coincidence, that I was just chasing the angle of abandoned spaces. But the guilt had settled in my bones like mold quiet, slow and irreversible. So I brought the old camera, the one he once complimented, and hiked in with nothing but a pack, a tripod, and the promise to myself that I'd treat this place with respect. The first night was uneventful. Cold wind, distant coyotes, and the creak of old wood beneath my cot. But the second morning, I found that bundle, almost identical to the one from college. Only this time, the cloth was stained a dark rust color at the seams, like dried blood. I set it on the table and backed away, heart knocking harder than it should have. The room felt smaller, closer. I picked up my camera to photograph it, reflex more than thought, but when I looked through the viewfinder, the bundle was wet again. I blinked, lowered the camera, still dry, raised it wet again. A bead of fresh red trailing down the cloth like it was bleeding through the lens. I didn't take the picture. Couldn't. I stepped outside instead, into the pale, mid-morning light, trying to shake the cold sweat gathering under my shirt. The forest didn't move. Not a breeze, not a bird. Just the bundle behind me, waiting. That night, I heard movement inside the cabin while I was outside brushing my teeth in the dark. Slow steps, fabric dragging. I stayed frozen by the wash basin, listening. The sound moved to the window, then stopped. When I gathered the nerve to step back in, the bundle had been moved from the table to the center of the floor. The black thread was untied. I didn't sleep. I sat with my back to the wall, flashlight in one hand, the bundle in the center of the floor, untouched. The thread had come loose on its own, no knife, no tearing, just unraveled like it had never been tied at all. I couldn't bring myself to touch it again. The cloth had darkened where the stain spread, and a faint smell hung in the air, now not rot exactly. Something metallic, old blood and wet stone. Just after 3, I heard something whisper across the floorboards, not footsteps, more like a dragging cloth maybe, or fingers. It circled the room once, but nothing showed itself. Then the camera shutter clicked. I hadn't touched it. It was still on the table, lens capped, battery half drained. Another click. Then again. It kept snapping, rhythmically, one photo every few seconds, like it was documenting the room, or me. I stood up, walked over slowly, and turned the power switch off. The clicks stopped. I checked the memory card, out of instinct. 5 new photos. The first was of the bundle. The second, the bundle slightly open. The third, darker, something just barely visible beneath the folds, something wet and raw. The fourth, I can't explain. It was the inside of the cabin, but the walls looked older, burned or caved in, and there were symbols scorched along the ceiling. The 5th photo was of me, sitting in the corner, but I hadn't taken it. I packed before sunrise, left the cabin just as the trees started to glow gray-blue. But I didn't make it far. Less than an hour down the trail. I tripped over something buried beneath the leaves, a second bundle. Identical cloth, identical thread, fresh, still warm. I screamed, shoved it aside, kept walking. I didn't stop again until I reached the old ranger station near the base. The door was locked, abandoned. But on the porch was a small paper package wrapped in wax. Inside was a print, one of the photos from my camera, the one with my face, and a note beneath it. In handwriting I hadn't seen in a decade. You were warned. You never gave it back. I still don't know what was in that first bundle. I never opened it. I mailed it to the Cherokee Museum in North Carolina under an anonymous name. But I don't think it matters. The photos keep showing up, in my inbox, on my phone, on postcards with no return address, and in everyone. The background is closer, the figure clearer, and it's always holding a bundle, waiting for me to take it. The photo didn't look right. I took it myself 2 weeks before the rains during a site check on the eastern slope near Deep Gap. It showed a fault line across the exposed granite, a thin white crack spidering down into shadow. At the time, I logged it as a minor concern, noted erosion, flagged it for later inspection. Nothing urgent. But now, staring at it again in the stale light of my apartment, something felt off. The line had changed. My name's Rachel Voss. I'm 34, a geologist with the U.S. Forest Service. And most days, my job is slow, methodical. Walk the land, photograph rock formations, send up reports that disappear into inboxes and memos. 2 months ago, a rock slide destroyed part of a temporary ranger outpost we'd built on that same slope. No one died, but I'd sent a warning weeks earlier. The kind of preliminary alert that usually ends up archived and forgotten. And I never followed up. I kept telling myself it wouldn't have mattered that the system fails people all the time, but the truth sat heavy in my chest, sharp as gravel. The rains came early that week. Saturation hit fast. And when the slope gave, it gave hard. Boulders the size of sheds tumbled like toys, trees cracked at the roots, and the station went with them. I didn't go out there. I handled the desk work. But now, sitting alone with that photo, I wished I had. The crack in the rock was wrong. Not just longer, deeper. Somehow, like it had curled further down into something. I zoomed in, checking details. There, along the shadowed line, was something I hadn't seen before. A new fissure. A small branch veering off the main crack, one that bent slightly upward. Against gravity, against logic. My breath caught in my throat. I blinked, thinking maybe it was glare. But it stayed. Just there. I tried to let it go, closed the file, stood up, walked away, but my thoughts kept spiraling. What else had I missed? Was it just paranoia, or something else that night? I had the first dream. I was back on the slope, kneeling. The crack was wider than in real life, a yawning mouth in the granite. It breathed. I could feel warm air pulsing from its depths. And then the voice, not loud, not even human, just present, whispering between the trees. You were supposed to see it. I woke drenched in sweat, with dirt beneath my nails. The next morning, I opened the photo again, and the crack had grown. I checked everything: file creation date, metadata, storage logs, no edits, no external access. The image had changed by itself. I emailed a copy to Rob, one of our hazard analysts in Asheville. He called back an hour later. "I see what you mean," he said. "That split looks deeper than before. But, Rachel, was someone with you out there?" "What?" "There's someone in the photo." I pulled it up again, heart thudding, near the top right corner, barely visible against the tree line. There was a shape, too narrow to be a tree trunk, too defined to be a shadow. A person, thin, facing the camera. My hands went cold. I had been alone that day. I remembered being alone. I printed the photo, packed a day bag, drove the 2 hours back to the slope. The air got colder as I climbed. The trail was overgrown from runoff branches bowed low, heavy with last week's rain. I reached the ridge by late afternoon. The tape from the original investigation still fluttered between saplings, half torn and useless. I stepped over it and found the same outcrop where I'd stood 2 weeks ago. And the crack was bigger, not eroded, not weathered, opened. A clean split down the stone, as if something had pushed from the inside. I knelt beside it, touched the rock. It was warm again. Not sun-warmed, alive, warm. My palm tingled. I held my breath and leaned in, and I swear, somewhere inside that darkness, I heard the sound of stone breathing. I didn't sleep. I sat with my back to the wall, flashlight gripped tight, eyes fixed on the ceiling. The bundle of blankets in Lana's room never moved. I could hear her breathing shallow, soft, like a whisper against the stillness. But every now and then, I thought I heard something else. A faint scrape, like nails across the roof shingles. It wasn't loud. It wasn't steady. But it was there. By the time light crept through the trees, I was already outside, circling the cabin. I checked the roof again. This time, I climbed all the way up. Still nothing. No footprints, no scuffs. But the sense of wrongness wouldn't leave. It felt like the cabin had exhaled something in the night. Something it couldn't take back. I didn't tell Lana what I saw the night before. I just made her breakfast, helped her with her meds, and tried to pretend that nothing was waiting on the roof above our heads. That afternoon, I walked a mile down to the ranger's shack, but it was empty, locked up for the season. I thought about calling someone, a friend, a neighbor, anyone. But what would I say? Something's on my roof. My dying sister thinks it's under the house. I pictured the looks I'd get. I walked back slower, took the long trail through the hollow, and when I got home, I found the front door open. Lana was still inside, unharmed. But the kitchen window was unlatched. Neither of us had touched it. That night, I didn't wait. I sat in the hallway with the shotgun across my knees, flashlight propped against the wall. I heard nothing for hours. Then, around 2:30, the roof creaked. One step, then another. Something moved across the ceiling, deliberate, like it was testing the weight. I held my breath. The porch light flickered, then died. I felt the air shift. And that's when Lana called out soft, panicked. From the back room, Emily. I was already moving. Kicked open her door, flashlight sweeping the corners. She was sitting up, eyes wide, pointing to the floor. "It's under the house," she whispered. "It's moving." It knows we're still awake. I forced myself outside, down to the crawlspace hatch. My fingers trembled on the latch, but I pulled it open. The flashlight beam caught nothing but dirt and shadows at first. Then a shape moved low to the ground, pale and slick. I saw the bend of a joint, something long and hairless sliding deeper beneath the cabin. I slammed the hatch and shoved a concrete block over it. The rest of the night passed in silence, but I could feel it. Not gone. Just waiting. We left the cabin the next morning, packed only what we could carry. I didn't look back. Lana hasn't spoken about it since. She won't even say the word crawl space. But sometimes, she wakes in the middle of the night and just stares at the ceiling, listening. And I swear, when the room gets quiet enough, I can still hear the sound of footsteps overhead. 3 steps, pause, 3 more. Getting slower. Getting closer.